Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Tuesday, the 22nd of October. I'm Derek Clark, and it brings me great joy to say I'm joined for the second day in a row by Chris Jack. And your day off as well, Chris, so hats off to you.
Day two of the post-mortem. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Derek.
Yep, we're thinking off here there. How do we structure this show? Not another Clement bashing as yesterday was. There is bits of news to discuss, and we'll discuss great piece by Joshua on the website yesterday. You've got a piece on the website this morning as well, Chris, just discussing the current state of play and where Rangers go from here. So we'll kick off with Joshua's piece yesterday. Quite alarming, you've got to say. There's no two ways about it. When Rangers defeated Kilmarnock at Rugby Park less than 8 months ago, remember Rangers well and truly in the title race in that Tom Lawrence strike, James Tavernier free kick that sealed a comeback 2-1 win. Up to that point, Philippe Clement had boasted an 18 wins out of 20 record in the league. Since then, he's achieved only 9 victories from 18 matches. The train has come off the tracks well and truly, Chris. It's got many, including me, scratching my head as to what has happened since that game when it all looked, that looked like a real proper match where you look back on a title win and you think that's where Rangers showed their title credentials. They're nowhere near that at this moment in time. What's happened?
That's the key question. I'm sure that's the question that Philippe Clement is asking himself as well, because you look back to that period of the season, and they had done since Clement came in and replaced Michael Beale this time last year. Those initial weeks, those initial months, they were encouraging for Rangers. Performances perhaps not always at the highest level, but there was enough there where you could see that they were potentially onto something that during that campaign. The gap that he inherited was whittled down, and Rangers found themselves in a position where I don't think we ever said they will go on and win the title, but I think we could see at that stage they have a chance. And you then think back, I wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago, looking back at the Motherwell game at Ibrox, and since then you contrast Motherwell at Ibrox and that Kelly game that Josh references in his piece that was on the site yesterday morning. Those are just two very, very contrasting occasions. As you say, that Kelly game, the Rangers fans that night thought there's definitely something here. This is a big test that's been passed. You then go to the Motherwell game. Turns out it's the beginning of the end in terms of the title challenge. And Rangers have never really recovered from that. They've never really had any momentum after that. Obviously, then didn't go on and win the title. Momentum has just not been built this season at all. There's not been enough for the fans to get behind, and that run of form, that 9 and 18, that's really, really alarming for Philippe Clement. Yes, he's going through this rebuild. Yes, there's new players, but that process has to be worked through at the same time as results are being earned. That may sound unfair, it may sound harsh. That's just life at Rangers. You either accept that and you deal with it and you work your way through it, or you go and find a job somewhere else, because that's the demand, that's the expectation, and that's just how it is here. You do not get away with a run of 9 out of 18 and get away with no criticism. And as we've seen over the last 48 hours or so, the criticism has definitely been there. And as I write in my piece this morning, he finds himself in a really, really difficult position now. Being this far adrift of Celtic at this stage is never going to be acceptable. If you fast forward a week and you potentially end up 9 behind Aberdeen, that puts a very, very different slant on what is already a very difficult situation for him.
Yes, it's not just this far behind Celtic, it's this far behind Aberdeen as well, which has certainly set alarm bells ringing. I think Rangers and very much in a race for second. I don't think that place, at least second, is guaranteed at this point in time. No chance about that. Lots of points coming in, as we would expect. Jim McKerrow with a point. Morning, lads. Can't see PC being sacked before the end of the season. No one in authority to sack him. No one in authority to pick a replacement. This was an interesting point, and I've seen sort of comparisons with Paul Le Guen before him, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst to an extent as well, Chris. David says, can't the board work it out? A foreign manager doesn't work in Scotland and Europe. Yes, but not in Scotland. They don't understand Scotland. Is this a fair point, do you reckon? Do Rangers need a British-based manager, someone that understands the Scottish game? I seen Johnny, when he was on with Joshua for the post-match show, saying that the manager Rangers have brought in, Giovanni, was the same, to sort of set up that mid-block, their sort of European-style coach, perhaps treating the Scottish opposition with too much respect, perhaps, instead of just going out there, blowing them away and winning the game in the first half. For the life of me, I can't remember the last time, Ross County perhaps this season, when Rangers have had the game sewn up pretty early on, Chris. Is this because of the sort of style, the calibre of manager they're bringing in from overseas?
I don't think it's necessarily a nationality thing. If you think back just a couple of seasons, there was a guy from Greece, Australia, who did not too badly across the city, unfortunately. And he arrived with, as Chapruni says there, he arrived with no prior knowledge of or experience of working in Scottish football. Ultimately, I think if you're a good manager and you have the right outlook on the game, you understand the game, you can study Scottish football and understand what it's going to take to be successful here. And you think back to perhaps the early days of Steven Gerrard's reign. I think it took him a bit of time to understand just what Scottish football is all about. Going to like Pittodrie, like going to Kilmarnock, these games are very different from your European games, home or abroad. They're very different from your Ibrox games, and once you understand that and you find a way to combat that and everything that these fixtures bring, you can then be successful in them. Having been here for 12 months, I would have hoped by now that Clement would have understood that. I say that again, as I mentioned, that piece that I've got on the site this morning. The Kelly pitch should have been no surprise to anyone at Rangers. It's been there for long enough. Now, we touched on this yesterday. Kelly's approach and how good they are at home should be no surprise to anyone. They've been doing it for a couple of seasons now. So you those excuses, if you like, those mitigating factors, they're taken completely off the table for me. They don't come into the equation because the manager has been here for long enough. A number of these players have been here for long enough, and even the new ones. I think we touched on a couple of them yesterday. Does it really make that much of a difference? If you are prepared for it, you can train on that surface. You know by now, surely, what these type of games are going to be. And as we touched on yesterday, the idea that you have to win the battle before you win the war. That's what these games are. That's what these games can be like. You have to show a certain level of application, show a certain level of willingness to go and win your 50-50s, to win the duels, as the manager phrases it. And once you do that, your higher quality then should allow you to go and play your football and allow your quality, because you do have better players than Kilmarnock, should allow you to go and win the game. It's only a couple of months since Celtic won at 5, I think they took off Kelly down at Rugby Park. So it can be done. But Rangers just don't do it often enough and don't seem to learn the lessons. And it's almost a case of the more things change, the more they stay the same at present.
Yep, they did lose twice as well last season, Celtic, didn't at Rugby Park. Derek McInnes does have his side well organised. They're not as strong as they were last season, that's for sure. But what was galling on Sunday was the fact we've seen this movie many times before, and it wasn't really a surprise to see Rangers blow the opportunity to close the gap at the top. Some support from Clement, from Dave McFarlane, says, can we really blame Clement? He has a squad and a board that are not where it needs to be. This has to be a project like when Gerrard came in. Sad as it is, but that's the reality. can Rangers afford to? I mean, when Gerrard came in, the club were in the club where they were in a completely different place, Chris. But the regression since 55 has been staggering to a point where are Rangers back in a sort of similar position as they were when Steven Gerrard took over the reins, do you reckon?
I saw that point, or a point similar to David's, raised a couple of times on social media yesterday, and I think it's a different set of circumstances. Now, you think back to 2018 when Stephen came in, Rangers were a basket case of a football club. Now, you could say things are not exactly rosy at present, which of course they're not, but the club, when he came in, was a really, really difficult place. Had been through some difficult seasons, and I think that's why the fans are as upset as they are now, because they have been through that rebuild. They've been through those bad days. They've been through that period of give it a couple of seasons and we're in a project, we're in a rebuild. They've been through that. They've done the hard yards. They've won a league title. They've got to a European final. They've won domestic cups. They're entitled to say, well, why should we suck it up and why should we be back in that situation? The Rangers are hurtling towards that situation at present, unfortunately, because there's so many, as we touched on yesterday, there's so many issues in play at present. But I think the fans are quite entitled to say, look, we've done our bit. We stood by when Gerrard was signing players and showing signs of improvement, but then not winning trophies. We sucked it up. We got through it. We then get to a point, and from that point on, Rangers should never be going back the way. But I think again, as we've touched on, that regression now, that not going forward, not even standing still in some regards, going back the way, that's what makes this as hard for the fans to stomach. And again, if you look at the Gerrard comparison, I think not exactly week to week, but periods of each campaign, there were signs that Rangers perhaps were on the right track. There were signs that the squad was in the right place, that Gerrard was learning. I mentioned like losing games at Kelly and losing at Aberdeen. He learned from those mistakes, learned from those experiences, and crucially, he had Celtic's number. Now, you think back to Gerrard's Old Firm record compared to what has followed in the Old Firm. Rangers' record against Celtic in recent seasons is absolutely appallingly bad. Before that, Gerrard he got over that fear factor. He gave a squad belief. He gave a squad a tactical blueprint. He gave them a way of playing that could go not just compete with Celtic, but could beat them. And he flipped that Old Firm situation very much in Rangers' favour. Now it's so far away another way, and that's a big thing that Gio suffered from, Michael Beale suffered from, Clement has suffered from. He needs a result in an Old Firm game. Will he even get to the next Old Firm game? That's again, as we see from the comments on the show this morning, many would say, look, I don't even want him to get the New Year Old Firm. So I think I do get where David was coming from in terms of it has to be a longer term project. It has to be this bigger picture. But the bigger picture only comes into play if the fans can actually see something to get behind. At a lot of times during Gerrard, they did, and that's why they could buy into it. A lot of times since then, they've not, and that's why now the Rangers now find themselves in this situation once again. This time of the season, there's calls for managers to lose their job and to go because we're just not seeing the signs that have to be seen.
Yeah, I think Gerrard's team in his first season would wipe the floor with this current Rangers side. I've got to say that was a team very much in the developmental stage, but he found a way to beat Celtic. Now it took him, like the comment said before, 3 seasons before he got it right, and Rangers went on that glorious run to 55, that unbeaten run, of course. John McKean with the point says we're back to hope rather than expectation. Yeah, certainly heading into Old Firm matches, like you say, Chris, the record is absolutely appalling. It is more hope than anything else. When Gerrard was in charge in these games, you had an expectation Rangers would roll the sleeves up and put in that 100% effort and get, more often than not, they would get a decent result. Whereas now, well, when was the last time Rangers won a meaningful Old Firm match? The Scottish Cup semi-final under Gio. Prior to that, it was under Gerrard, that Helander header which tells you everything you need to know. So, yeah, that is another glaring area of concern under this Rangers manager. He has to beat Celtic. You've said it many times before, Chris. A Rangers manager that can't beat Celtic is of no use to anyone. So how does he sort this out? He's not going anywhere at this moment in time. He has to sort it out starting on Thursday. By the way, I mean, we're pitching up to Ibrox on Thursday. That is in no way a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. I was speaking to a Romanian football journalist yesterday, and he says that FCSB have they've got a lot of speed on the flanks, on the wings, and they're playing well at this moment in time. They're on a good run of form. They've won their first 2 Europa League matches, and they're heading to Ibrox with confidence. So, yeah, I can see it being could potentially be a very tough evening, Chris. Heading into that game. A lot of comments coming in about the formation. Chipperuni says formation needs change. There is no style of play. Thomas also wanting a change in formation. Has to do it for Thursday, does he not? Or can you see that happening?
I think if he was to read the room, then he would do. I don't see it happening because I think there's enough of a body of evidence over the last 12 months to suggest this is the way he wants to play his football. This is the way he wants to set the side up. This is the way that Rangers are going to continue. I would be surprised if we see anything too radical on Thursday. I think that game it's really interesting from a couple of perspectives. One, what happens on the pitch, and two, what happens off the pitch. Now, does the crowd, does the fan base stick with this side, stick with this manager, or are people turning up almost expecting Rangers to fail, expecting to have the chance to shout at people? Are they going there with a negative mindset? And again, I think from what we've seen online over the last couple of days, the comments that we see on the show and on the site, people are almost just scunnered with the whole situation at present. Yeah. I don't think there's anyone who's bouncing out of their bed on Thursday morning and saying, "I can't wait to finish work and get to Ibrox tonight. It's going to be a cracker." It's just not. People are not in that frame of mind. The manager and the team, they have to give the fans and have to give the crowd something to get behind. If they don't, we all know how Ibrox can go. We know how difficult a place it can be for players to play when things are not going well. Things are very much not going well right now, and it won't take much. I think the start of the game, you will get that initial kind of backing from the crowd. You will get people who will be up for it. It's a European game. In a Europa League sense, it's a must-win game for Rangers. If they're going to have a chance of getting out of this section into the latter stages, you really have to be taking 3 points on Thursday night. So I think there will be that initial backing, but then a lot depends on the start. How are the team performing? Do they look like scoring goals? Do they look like conceding goals? And I think that the crowd could then turn really, really quickly, and that then becomes another issue for these players and for the manager to try and overcome. In terms of how he's going to set the side up, I think it'll be roughly the same. Also, we don't know the Robin proper injury situation, so perhaps Balogun comes in there. Tavernier is going to start because Tav always starts. It's going to be Shefty on the left. Midfield, it's going to be 2 of the 3 out of Diomande, Raskin and Barron. Ahead of that, just doesn't have the options to change it. So Chernley starts off the right, left-hand side. Do you maybe go McCausland and then move Bayrami into the 10, or do you keep Bayrami left and play Lawrence at 10? And Dessers is going to get an order through the middle because Adilo is not in the squad. Igaman's not at the level. Therefore, Dessers gets the jersey regardless of his form and contribution at present. So there's a lot. I don't think that answer will perhaps enthuse a lot of people. If MD was sputtering about whether to go and buy a ticket for Thursday night, I don't think I've given them the big sales pitch there. But I think if you take a step back, you look at it, that's just the situation that the Rangers are in right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, lack of personnel is evident, of course. I was thinking about this yesterday, how Rangers should set up, not how Clement is expected to. I'd be going 3-5-2. I've still got Tavernier in my team. Now, it depends, of course. We'll hear from the manager tomorrow when he conducts his pre-match press conference. I would be going with a back three. I would be going Balogun, Suter, and Cash and Weirjo at the back, with Jefte and Tav wing back, a midfield three, Barron, Raskin, and probably more likely Diamandi, but I want to see a better performance from him, with Bayrami just playing off Hamza Igaman. But that is my team. I very much doubt that will be the case. But let us know in the comments, folks, if you would go with that, or else any other players you would like to see getting a run out on Thursday evening. The reason I put, the wing backs, Rangers lack pace, Chris. There's no, Jefte aside, there's no one with blistering pace. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Matondo's injured, of course, but that's a real quality of the modern game. You have to have pace in your side, and Rangers lack it hugely in the team just now. They're just slow and cumbersome, easy to play against and defend against.
I think they lack pace, they lack physicality, they lack power in certain areas as well. And when you combine that with a tactical setup that people have seen, have judged, a lot of people have had enough of, it doesn't bode very well. And you then understand why the team are in this situation. Again, Josh outlined some of the stats in his piece yesterday, and it's not just the points that are alarming for Rangers. We've touched on this. They don't score enough goals. They concede poor goals like they did at the weekend, and that's not going to be conducive to a run of form. A point I made in the article on the site this morning. Rangers don't dominate games; they edge them. If you look back at the games they have won outside of that Ross County game, when they obviously scored 6 that afternoon. When was the last time, as you touched on earlier on, when was the last time Rangers really dominated a game and looked like going in, not just in terms of the scoring a handful of goals, actually being on the front foot and controlling the flow of it, controlling the tempo on it. Rangers games too often these days, they're almost decided on a flip of a coin. Sunday was that. You could play that game 10 times and Rangers would never win it 10 times. Kelly would never win it 10 times, because these games, you are just flipping a coin. Sometimes they win them, sometimes they don't. And ultimately, that's just not good enough for Rangers. You look at where they have to be. You look at the finance that's been put in the squad. I know the wage bill has been brought back into line. I know the profile of the squad has been changed in terms of age. There is still a lot of money on the pitch every single week. A damn sight more than Derek McInnes has got to play with, or that Stephen Naismith had to play with at the start of the season, or that even the games that Rangers have won, those respective managers have got to play with. And Rangers should be getting more from what they've got on the pitch. So the manager spoke again on Sunday about there's more potential in this squad than perhaps people see. Well, at some point that potential has to be realised.
Yes.
If that potential is there, surely it's then up to the manager to get that potential out of them. At this stage, Rangers should be doing better. That's not to say they should have gone and beat Leon. I think they were also a class above. That's the only game this season that you could say, well, Rangers might not win this one.
We should have been better. Yeah.
Old Firm game falls into that category as well. The level of performance has just not been there. And to touch on a point you made earlier on, if the fans see that performances are coming and that there is a style of play and that there's a way of going about things that's going to bring encouragement and it's ultimately going to bring performances and results, they can buy into it. When they don't see that, then that's why you have the game malaise almost amongst the fan base that we're seeing at present.
Yep. Spot on with that assessment. I think that it's all well and good saying that they've got potential, but it's up to the manager to realise that. And I've seen a criticism levelled at him, which player has or players have improved under his tenure as manager. You're struggling to think of any. John Suter, perhaps, but he is now playing in his more favoured right-hand side of the defence, so you could say he is one. That aside, you're really struggling to think of any more. Let us know if not thought of anyone in the comments, folks, but there's not one that certainly springs to mind and thinking, yet he is really benefited from Philip Clement's coaching. Leon Balogun was speaking, incidentally, after the game. Now, it was part of the embargoed section, so it was released yesterday. Said some interesting things as well. I'll read you some of the quotes that he had to say. He was quizzed. It can be eye-opening for new people to come out to this club, because as much as it can be a great place when things are going well, it can be a tough time when things aren't going well. He says, yes, and I'm not saying, like I said, I give that to the supporters. They really give their all to supporters everywhere, near and far, but it comes with something. You can't just take that for granted. I'm not saying anyone does, but you have to know that if you don't deliver, it can be uncomfortable, and you have to try to live up to their expectations as much as you can. It's not always reasonable that you then receive. I'm not for abuse of any sorts, but the criticism that comes up after a day like this, I think you have to face it. And he was quizzed as well. But do you see enough leaders in that dressing room that can cope with a day like today and bounce back from it? Says definitely. I think we've shown that in a season already, but obviously there's not much ammunition I have right now after a game like that today. And his question posed to him, whether he has a message for the fans, says it's their right to question things. They are the heartbeat of the club, and I think it's only right that they're there to question. But at the same time, if you do see the leaders on the pitch and in the team, and if you do see change, then be there. But I don't think I have to tell them anything, because they know that and they know what to do as well. You can read what he had to say over on the website, folks. You can watch that press conference in full over on the YouTube channel. Always speaks very well, Leon Balogun, Chris. And perhaps a little bit unfortunate he's not seen much game time this season. But as I said, they're at to have him in on Thursday. Certainly, if Proper doesn't make it, I think I would be inclined to start him anyway, because I've just not been impressed by Proper so far. Well, he's done okay, but I'm not entirely sure he's better. He's a lot better than Leon Balogun.
He always speaks well, Leon. I think you talk about players that get it, that understand it, that can handle the demand. I think he's definitely one of them. He's a smashing big guy to deal with. Playing wise, it's a shame he's not a couple of years younger, because if he was, you could see him being a real mainstay of that defence. We've seen his qualities throughout his two spells. Interesting to see what happens selection wise on Thursday. I think if Proper is fit, he will play. But I think that there will be. We'll speak about this on the show near the game. Yeah. I think we will see a number of people saying that Balogun should get that starting place. He's a guy that the fans like, and I think he has that respect from the fans, because even if he doesn't play well, you know that he cares. You know that he gives us all, and that might seem quite a basic thing for a professional footballer to actually show. But I think it's also an important one. The fans buy into players that they think is going through the same range of emotions that they are, and so he's definitely one of the standouts in the squad in that regard. And definitely, I spoke in that interview about leaders and the big figures within the dressing room. He's certainly one of them. Even if he doesn't make the team on Thursday night, doesn't make the team on Sunday, you can imagine him having a big influence behind the scenes to try and kind of get people back on track, and certainly let players know, certainly the ones that are newer to the club, let them know the situation that they're in and what's actually expected of them.
Yep. Right, we'll wrap up there, folks. Thanks as ever for tuning into the show. Just a heads up, those of you that are Rangers Review extra members, as I touched on earlier, I spoke to great guy, Theodore Giumatati, who gave us an insight into FCSB, why they are referred to as that. Great stuff about Gigi Bacali, the owner who picks the team, makes the subs, Chris, at half-time and in the second half, watches the games on his TV at home, has a link up to the coaching staff on the bench and tells them who to play, who to sub off, who to sub on. Absolutely incredible stuff. But go and have a watch of that, folks. It is great insight into Rangers Europa League opponents. And I think we'll do we'll record a Q&A as well this afternoon, around about 1:30. So I'll put out the post on the community page. Get your questions in. I imagine I will be inundated with those, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. And as we touched on earlier, press conference day tomorrow ahead of the game on Thursday. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Big thanks to Chris as ever, and we'll speak to you a little later on. Bye for now.